There we are.
Right.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you for. All right, let me.
Thank you for hanging in there with us,
Yeah.
Tamara.
No worries.
All right, and you can see the screen there with the chat GPT. Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So hi, good afternoon. Tamara, I don't think that we've met before. I'm Stephanie Pritchard. I teach in the English and Creative Writing department. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Stephanie. I teach in the Educational Leadership Department in the School of Ed.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thanks for coming. I'm Maggie. I'm in the Criminal Justice Department and here at CELT.
John in Economics and CELT.
So I suppose I would start by asking, Tamara, how were you looking for like one way in particular that faculty can make use of AI tools? Like, were you coming like really looking for professional development or really looking for the classroom or really looking for something else, or just kind of like whatever we throw at you?
Well, really, I'm open to it. You know, I have not used the AI tools. I've had lots of discussions with my students because, of course, everybody is faced with this being you know, a unique opportunity both with our students as well as to use professionally. So I'm open to, you know, how you've used it and learning as much as I can.
Okay, fantastic. So just to give you a little bit of background, I really started learning about AI tools this past summer. I served on a SUNY-wide task group that was charged with kind of exploring and researching and learning all of the different ways that AI could be both like a benefit and a potential problem in education. So John actually was on that task group too. The good news about that is that some of the things that we did were we generated a report based on some of our findings and our research, and that report is actually right now under review by the SUNY provost and should hopefully be released, we're really hoping, within the next couple of weeks. So that will be a much more comprehensive kind of research guide also that will be released and available to all SUNY faculty and staff. So keep your eyes out for that as well. But I wanted to do, and John and Maggie agreed that this would be a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about, you know, AI and what it can do, you know, and how it can be helpful. We're spending so much time right now, I think, talking about AI and students, which is valid, right? But I think the AI can be really helpful for faculty and staff as well, which is why we decided to do this presentation along with some of the others. So what I've done is I've structured this today to be kind of like a participatory thing. So I have some examples, but I was also going to do some things with ChatGPT in real time so that we can kind of experiment with it together and learn how you know, it can be most beneficial to the people who use it. So it's worth mentioning that I am using the free version of ChatGPT. There is a paid version too, which John has been playing with a little bit. So you can choose to upgrade to that one if you want. I think right now it's $20 a month. So, and like with anything, you know, like the paid version is actually coming out with more features that the free version will not have. So like, John, do you want to talk about some of the new features that you were just playing with?
Well, as of this morning, I got access to the newest features, which will read in images and interpret images and describe them in its own internal language so that you could have a graph, for example, or an image or a picture and ask it to analyze it. And it analyzes in the same way as if it was given that information as text. It will also, my version doesn't yet have this feature, but it should be rolling out very shortly. It will do text to speech and speech to text. So basically you'll be able to have conversations without typing with this version. And you have that with some of the mobile versions of this, for example, Chat On and some of the others right now, but it's going to be an expanded version. So it's now becoming multimodal, that very shortly, it will have the abilities to create images and graphs and so forth, which other AI products from the same company already have, DALL-E in particular. So it's becoming much more powerful every few weeks or every month or so.
I find it fascinating that ChatGPT is now trying to become a more comprehensive AI, right? That like in addition to generating text, it can also, do the images and the speech to text and things like that.
Yeah, they've been working on that for years, so it's not entirely new. All these features they had opened up to alpha testers back in March, and it's only now rolling out to the public release. Beta testers had access to this, I think, in May or June or so.
Okay.
It appears that everything's happening all at once, but it's the result of decades of work, basically.
Yeah. It reminds me of sort of like, like Google, right? Like how Google can like do so many things, right? And it seems like now, like, I wonder if like OpenAI with ChatGPT in particular is trying to be like sort of like the streamlined AI, right? Like the AI that you can go to like do many things, right? Yeah, or more things.
Although Google has its Bard version.
Right, it
which
has
is
Bard,
also,
right.
which you can sign up to use with any account. But if you are not using the college account, if you're using a personal account, you have the ability to use it in Google Docs, and Google Sheets, and Google Slides.
Right.
And it will help you create any content in any of those frameworks.
Right. Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how the AIs sort of like, like start to like, or the different companies start to kind of like battle it out in that way.
Become the leader of the AI things.
And in the last 3 days, Amazon has invested heavily in Claude, which is a competing AI that uses a somewhat different form of generative AI. It's much more efficient. It uses a fraction of the data resources of ChatGPT, and it also will accept text inputs that's about 20 to 30 times larger, and it also has data that the training database goes through early to mid now, 2023.
Oh, that's interesting.
Even more powerful in a lot of ways.
Yeah, since ChatGPT is still yes, I saw that. I've played around with Claude a little bit. I like it a lot. Yeah. So anyway, that was like our fun.
So how
digression.
can you use this in education, which is the topic?
So what I'm going to start with is let's look at how we can use it for, some professional development things first. This came to mind because I recently submitted a conference proposal not that long ago. So I wanted to kind of go through and do like one professional development example and then kind of switch over to how we might use it more in the classroom for teaching and for help with that. So the thing that is most important, I think, about using, one of the most important things about using generative AI is understanding how to prompt it effectively. So like prompting is like the word that we use for like when you go to type in a message, right? So like if you're telling it to do something, you are prompting it. So there's a term that's called prompt engineering, and that refers to how you construct your prompts that you give the AI. So there are good ways to send prompts, and then there are like not so good ways. So like with everything, usually the better your prompt is, the better response that you'll get from the AI. If you give it like not as good of a prompt, then you won't get the, the results that you might be looking for. So I wanted to go through and kind of show you an example of what a mediocre prompt looks like versus a better prompt, and then kind of like look at what the AI produces accordingly. So I'm just gonna like move
it to the other thing.
Okay, I can put it right there for right now. Is that all right? Okay. So here's the initial prompt that I gave it. And this prompt is actually something that many of my students who have been experimenting with this technology, this is like something that they would put in, right? So I need help writing an abstract for a writing conference. The theme of the conference is AI, and my presentation is going to be about the benefits and challenges of using AI in the classroom. So I wrote something that was like, I told it what I needed. I told it that I was going to a conference and what the theme was, and then generally what my presentation is about. But that prompt is still a little vague, right? There's a lot of wiggle room there. I do find that generative AI can be a really, really helpful brainstorming tool, even if the results it produces are subpar. So like it can be a really nice way to help generate ideas for things, even if you don't use AI to help you construct things or create things. So anyway, so here, this is my like kind of mediocre prompt that I put in right here. And then here is what ChatGPT came up with. And again, this is just the free version. So it gives me a title and then it writes the abstract. So I'm going to scroll down just a smidge and give you a second to like just skim the abstract that it came up with. So I'm wondering if anybody has any like, do you think that the AI did anything well with what it generated here for my make-believe conference?
Well, I think
Like,
it used
go
very
ahead.
strong language at the beginning, and it certainly seems incredibly comprehensive, which might be a great starting point. But when I think about sessions at conferences, they're usually a little bit more targeted.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is like big, right? This is really big.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderfully written. Like I just find it,
Sentence
so much,
structure, at
yeah,
least,
this,
and yeah.
Yeah.
it's concise, it's, it's a little, I guess, redundant in some places, but, but I don't know, I just think like this would save me so much time. Save me so much time, like thinking about words and, just.
It'll give you some ideas. It's good for
Yeah.
brainstorming. So if you
Yep.
were going to write something, you might
Mhm.
forget some things. This might remind you of some topics that you might want to include.
Yep.
But you could condense it. You could ask it to
Yes,
rewrite.
absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest thing, right? The biggest takeaway is that like this abstract sounds to me more like something that could fit an entire conference, right? Not just one session, right?
Yeah.
So like it does talk about a lot of really good things, but it's too big. So one of the things with prompt engineering that's super valuable is thinking about the words that you use and how you prompt the AI tool to work best for you. So here is my revised prompt. So what I've been following for my prompt engineering strategy is something that I learned about from Dr. Danny Liu, who teaches at the University of Sydney. And he talks about how a good prompt engineering has 4 criteria. You have to tell the AI what its role is, so what it should act as. You should tell the AI what the requirements are, like what you need it to do. You need to give the AI any additional instructions that it might need, just to kind of like keep in mind. And then you also need to tell the AI like just like a summary of like what you are looking for, like what are the components of this thing that it's creating. So I mentioned, and you can see that this second prompt, right, is like way bigger than my first one, right? My first prompt was like three lines.
Yeah.
So in this one, I'm telling it like, okay, like that's a good start, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. The cool thing about this technology is that, you know, it acts like a chat bot, right? So like you're having a conversation with it. So it remembers what you said earlier in the thread so that you can keep building on that more, right? So you don't need to repeat yourself if you are in like this conversation, right? This chat, which I think is pretty cool. So I told it that's a good start, but it's not quite right. Here are clearer guidelines. Act as a faculty member who teaches in the English and Creative Writing department at SUNY Oswego. So that's the role. That's what I want it to be, right? I want it to be a faculty member at a college. Now I'm telling it what to do. Make an abstract that can be submitted to the SUNY Council on Writing conference. So I named the conference, and then I give it a short summary about what the conference is. The abstract needs to include or needs to discuss the benefits and challenges of using AI in higher ed, specifically in writing classes. The abstract should briefly mention the presentation will include some hands-on exercises as well as a conversation about generative AI. The abstract should be written in 1 or 2 paragraphs and should not exceed 250 words. So this time the instructions are much more clear. And here's what it says. I'm going to try to get most of it. That's most of it.
It's a little presumptive. at the
Yeah,
start,
I was gonna
start,
say
you
it's,
know,
yeah.
Yeah, I like really hate how it starts.
But you don't have to use that.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
So I think what's interesting about like this prompt, right, is that it feels a little bit less general, right? And it does specify some of the things. So like I really liked, you know, that it even gives me like the numerous benefits that AI can bring to writing classes, like feedback, help with plagiarism detection, you know, creativity through generative AI prompts, whatever. So I like some of those ideas, even if I don't go with that. It could still be a nice way for me to like get some more direction. Do you guys have like other reactions to this one?
I guess, you know, my reaction was, you know, the assistance in plagiarism detection, like it, you know, I don't think we've,
Yeah.
like
that's
plagiarizing,
probably-
you know, detection just isn't really there yet, right?
Right.
You know, it's got a horrible failure rate.
So those are things that I'd be like, well, actually, I'm not sure you can do that super
Right.
accurately, but,
You bring up a really good point, Maggie, which is that, and this is something that like we will have to work with our students on, right? But that's another conversation. But basically, like the things that it gives you, some of the things will be really good suggestions, but some of the things will be completely made up, right? Like, you know, or it will be completely inaccurate. So everything that, you know, like the AI generates kind of has to be taken with a grain of salt. So for us, right, like we can figure that out quite easily, right? But that's one of the things that's going to be most problematic for our students, I think, is because they don't have as much knowledge about their different fields, right? Especially their subject matter, right? As we do. So that part can be really problematic. But I'm glad that you brought that up because, you know, it was nice that it gave us those examples. But one of the, like, I would be really interested to say, like, what do you mean by plagiarism detection, right? And like see what it says, which we could do. But we have other exercises to look at also, so we can do that later.
but it's definitely much more direct. It's much more specific to, you know, the prompts that you gave it. It's very responsive.
And we could narrow it down more and make it, right? You can keep talking to it, right? And get it to narrow down even more closely, right? I just did 2 like for the sake of time, right? But I mean, you could
ask it
continue to do
rewrite
it.
it as a haiku, for example.
Right, well, yeah, absolutely,
And
right,
then it
yeah.
will really shrink it.
Yeah. I will say though, like for me, I don't know about you, Tamara, but like for me, like I have a really hard time coming up with like titles of things. So like I was getting ready to, like I was doing some conference proposals and I like put in a very short summary of my talk into ChatGPT and was like, give me 3 different titles for this talk. Right. And it will. And you know, some of them are bad and some of them are okay. You can mix them together, right? But that's a really, really handy way to use this also.
Yeah, I'm never gonna write a title for a paper again.
Yeah.
On my own because they're I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I'm like, this is the most boring paper
Generate
ever.
50 titles.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Well, I also thought like in this second paragraph, you know, thinking about using this as a presenter, it gives you some ideas for structuring things within the session. And maybe that wasn't what I was thinking of, and it's a good idea. Or maybe it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything around ethics in this presentation, so I would leave those things out. So I see it really valuable as, especially as even just a starting point for then us to bring our own voice or ideas to it.
For
And you
sure.
could go further and generate a slide presentation on this.
Right.
It will
And it'll-
generate an outline of
Yeah.
the slides at least.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, you could, I mean, once you settle on something, right? I mean, you could put, maybe you decide to put your abstract in, right? And say, now please, you know, outline my presentation for me, right? And it will. Yeah. So let's go, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. And let's look at our second example. So, got to put this in a place where it works. That'll work. Because then I can't look back and forth. All right, so I teach writing, and I do not usually use rubrics very often. I tend to like just give my students feedback on different things, but sometimes in my classes, you know, I find that a rubric or 2 can be really helpful for some assignments. So what I've shared here is an assignment that my students have this semester. I'm teaching a first-year signature course. It's a spoken word poetry class. I've taught this class for a couple of years now. And one of the assignments that I give them is something that's called a find and share. And that's exactly what it sounds like. I want them to go find an example of a contemporary spoken word poem. And then their job is to share it with the class and then talk about why they chose it, what they liked about it, and pull out like one quote from the poem that like resonated with them, right? It's a nice way for them to kind of start experimenting with, you know, like different spoken word poetry places, right? And, you know, for them to kind of like see a little bit more about spoken word poetry aside from the things that I give them in class. So I decided that for this assignment, I wanted to try to make my life easy and create a rubric for it. So this is what I prompted the AI. I said, please make a rubric for this assignment. I give it a summary of the assignment. And then that's it. So I tell them what I want it to do, and then I give it the assignment. So here's what it came up with. And then this is the one that we're going to play with a little bit more, because I personally, and again, I don't do a lot of rubrics, but I don't love this rubric. Like, look at how it's like laid out with the vertical bars. What are those called?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
What these
You
things
know,
are called?
It's
I
a
don't know.
type in computer programming. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what it's called.
I gotta ask Rebecca. So anyway, so it divides it up right into the poem selection, the statement, the presentation, and then like an overall. But like I personally have a hard time like doing this, right? Like excellent, and then like understanding that this is excellent, right? It's just high, it makes me think too much. The good, and then this part is good, right? Like I have a hard time seeing like what goes with what.
Well, if you
Me
were in
personally.
the rubric, though, you would copy and paste those into the cells in the rubric and bright space.
Okay, that's true.
Could you give them I was wondering if the template was presented to Chat GPT if they could drop it in. We do a ton of rubrics in my program. So
Um, I always try to be polite, because if AI does take over the world, like I want it to remember that I was nice to it.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna
I find
prompt it
myself
with,
doing that too,
Yeah.
like, thank you, and please, I'm like.
well, you know, I went to an AQ presentation on AI, and their demonstration also started with pleases and ended with thank yous in their requests as well.
feel like it's just good practice, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Mhm.
gonna say it, I like this, but I find your format to be confusing. Can you try again in a different format, please? And I'm gonna see what it does. So here it goes.
Wow,
Look how
Nice.
beautiful that is,
Wow.
that was nice.
right? See, like I
Man.
really like that.
And
Yeah.
again, you can copy and paste that into Brightspace
Right.
if you're using Brightspace.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that that's good, right? I like this format way better, right? For me personally, anyway. So, and it does, like, it's still doing the same things. It's talking about the poem that they chose, you know, the writing statement, the presentation that they have to do, and then kind of like the overall thing. So let's, for fun, right? Choose something on here that we want it to continue to change. Like what's something, and especially like if you do a lot of rubrics, so this is something that I don't know as much about. So what's something that you would like to see on here, Tamara, from what you've got?
Yeah, well, you know, we sometimes include like I guess you know, the quality of the analysis or the synthesis, so the thinking that would be evident in the writing.
Okay. Make
Criteria.
see more specifics, especially related to, would you say like the thinking?
Yeah, the level of an analysis or connection, you know, if they're connecting to other poetry that you worked with them on, and that may be beyond the scope of the assignment, but just thinking of things we ask in our.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's fun to see like how it can make it more specific also, right? So I'd like to see more specifics, especially related to the level analysis and integration of the quote, right? Because that is something, you know, that we were
Perfect.
looking for. So let's
Yep.
see what it does. Oh, wow.
He's added a
Yeah.
lot.
It added a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
Graded quote with things.
Yeah.
But then you can ask it to simplify or, you know.
Right.
shorten.
Or you could just take out some stuff, right? If you wanted. So I like the themes, techniques, emotional impact. Like I really like that.
Mhm.
So then I could say something like, now the other components don't feel as developed. Can you rewrite
okay.
the other grading criteria with this same level of specificity? And then it, you know, because now it seems weird, right? Like that we've got like all of this for that, but that the presentation is like super. So let's look at, so presentation, it said confident, dynamic, and engaging delivery, rich discussion of 3 aspects. So let's just see what it does for the rewritten presentation.
Leave them all longer.
Yeah. Student confidently presents the chosen poem to the class, engaging the group with a dynamic delivery that captures the emotional depth and impact, well structured.
Rich, insightful, class discussion, discusses 3 aspects from the statement, offering performance, and encouraging class participation. I mean, I feel like I need to change my presentation rubrics.
Yeah, right. Dynamic discussion. It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I've said a few times, like I don't use rubrics frequently, but I think one of the reasons that I don't use them very much is because I feel like everything that I make myself is not very good. So I started using AI to help me make a few different rubrics for my classes, on some of the assignments. And I've been pretty happy with some of the language, like not all of it like works, but I've been happy with how it kind of breaks up the criteria and how it gives me some like a starting off point, right? Like some boilerplate language that I feel like I can use. And it takes me a long time too to like make a rubric.
No, it's very hard work.
Yeah.
And so this is wonderful, especially because I think it also makes it more clear and specific for the students to know, like, what is the expectation? What does excellent mean? Right? Or whatever those headings are across the top. So yeah, this is amazing.
So let's move on to another way that it can help us in like for class. So the next example that I'm going to do is connected to some classroom activities. So in my classes, especially in the creative writing courses, we do a lot of like writing prompts and informal writing. I do it in composition too, actually. I think it's a really nice way for students to kind of think about things and get some words on the page before we have a class discussion, whatever. So what I did here was I asked the AI to act as an expert in poetry writing. And then I want it to create 5 different informal writing prompts that connect to the following assignment. Write a poem that's connected to the idea before the breakup. The breakup could be a romantic relationship, an ending to a friendship, or about something that never got started. Now, I made sure to tell the AI that this is the end of the assignment, right? Now it knows that the assignment is done. So every writing prompt that it creates should help my students approach this idea in a different way. Each prompt should be able to be completed during class time. Students should have less than 10 minutes to complete each prompt. So I find by telling it the time limits, especially, that's helpful because then it will give you things that can be completed like in, what I mean? Like whatever time frame you're looking for. If you were to use this to like lesson plan, you can do that as well. You can say, I want you to make a whole lesson plan for me. And it will, and you could say, tell me how much time would be associated with each activity over the course of this class period, and it will do that for you. I don't have lesson planning as a sample for today, but that could definitely be something that we do as a follow-up. Like if you would be interested, and we could definitely do that. So anyway, so this is just an informal thing, right? In my classes, we do a bunch of informal writing before they submit like their creative assignment, and it's basically a way for me to help give them ideas about how they can approach it. So anyway, here's what it came up with. And some of these I really don't hate. So it's before the breakup, right? So ask your students to imagine they're writing a letter to someone before they break up. A snapshot in time, have your students choose a specific moment or event that occurred just before a breakup. And then it could be a scene at a cafe, walk in the park, blah, blah, blah. This one is weird, but interesting. We're creative writers. We like to do strange things. So like have them write from a perspective of an inanimate object that witnessed the events leading up to the breakup. Again, it's weird, but like we could go with it. Write a poem as if the breakup never happened, which I think would be interesting, and explore how life may have been different. And then whatever, right? So it came up with like 5 different, not terrible, right? Some of them I wouldn't do, but like it came up with 5 unique writing prompts that were all connected to my assignment. So if you don't like what the AI came up with, you can tell it and then ask it to generate more examples on the same subject matter. So it said sorry to me, which I appreciate. And then I have 5 different examples. This one I think is fascinating. I really like this. Like we're going to do this in class. Make a playlist of songs that represent the emotions and experiences leading up to a breakup. I think that's so interesting. And I think that they'll like that also. So if we were going to then, so I do want to show you, so let's say, I don't know which one, John, you can pick one because I know that you love the creative writing. Which one of these, John, do you want to pick to do? You want to do the playlist, the text message,
Go ahead.
the collage?
Do the playlist.
Do the playlist. Okay. Be nice to it again. How many songs do we want, Maggie?
5.
Should they be contemporary songs?
No, I
No.
just want to see like the whole.
Okay, okay. Well, let's just see what it picks to include at least 5 songs. Why and how it relates to the situation. You might have to create a story about the breakup or, okay, so let's see what it does. Bittersweet Symphony. No scrubs. Oh man. That's really interesting. Okay.
Well,
And of course, students could use the same tool to generate responses.
Absolutely. Yeah,
sure.
they could. Yeah. But I like that, you know, like for us, because, you know, for me, and I don't, you guys too, probably, like I spend a lot of it, just like when we were talking about the rubrics, I spend a lot of time coming up with like examples of things to show my students. And sometimes I make them myself because I find that a lot of the examples, right, like I show them a lot of published poetry, but they can also find that very, very intimidating, right? And if they're just like this class, it's an introductory class, right? They're just starting out. So I like to show them some things that feel more like it's on their level, right? Like things that feel more achievable to them. So like something like this, I would obviously have to make changes to the context, right? But you know, if I were to show them this playlist, I think that they would be fine with that, you know, and it would be a good example about like what I'm looking for them to do. So.
It's a great, it's not unique, but I appreciate the examples that you're providing because these are things I never would have thought of to approach the tool with, and off the top of my head. We're so used to doing these things on our own, right?
I think back to like all of the time that I've spent, and I mean, like, it's all good, right? Like it's a learning experience for us. And I think that that's something that we really need to hang on to, like with this technology, you know, and like really tell our students that like, listen, you still need to learn, like this can't do everything for you. But, like, I think it's really interesting thinking about like how I can create such a varied material so quickly to kind of go along with things that I've already made, or like this assignment, the breakup assignment is new this semester, right? I gave it to my students yesterday. They love it. So I'm like, to come up with writing prompts, especially, I think is really, really helpful in this way, because for me, it's the first time doing something, right? And it's nice to see what might work and what might not work, and to have backups, right?
It might be interesting to do an IRB and to ask them what relationships are in now, and then after this to see if it has any effect on
They find new ways to break up.
Well,
yeah,
your point about varying things too, I think about this opens the door to maybe to explore different perspectives that we personally don't bring to something, but we know we have classrooms full of students that have had different experiences from us.
A
Yeah.
common use of this that many people are recommending is creating personas of
Yeah.
students and create an array of them that you could then use to help structure your course design and so forth.
Yep.
To think about the variety of students who may be in your classes, if you create a diverse array of personas, could be a good way of testing.
Yep.
I've put like assignment instructions that I've written into this and ask it to, rewrite it, in a clear way, and it pops out, my assignment, but with, a bit more direct language and more concise language. And so I found it helpful, just to ensure that I'm communicating effectively, right? And not, stuck up in, using words that may not, resonate with students as easily.
Yeah, that's a good, I've done that also. And it's been really interesting to see how the AI will kind of like restructure things or say things or include things that I initially didn't think about. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's another really wonderful way to kind of use these tools. So the last example that I have, so I'm going to preface this one because there has been some conversation kind of like circling, right, about, well, if students are going to use AI to write their papers, I'm going to use AI to respond to their papers, right? So this is where we get into some of like the ethics around this, right? Like I personally will not be using AI to respond to my students' writing, because that means that I will have to put my students' writing into the AI, right, in order for it to respond. And right now, like the way that this is working, right, is, and when you sign up for ChatGPT, it will give you like a little blurb right at the beginning, right, that says, make sure that you're not including any sensitive information, make sure that you're not including private information, right? So for me, I don't want to put my students' intellectual property into generative AI. I don't feel good about doing that. I think some people might do it, but I personally don't agree with it because of that privacy thing, right? And I think that we should really keep that in mind. But there are ways that you can use generative AI to help you streamline your process of giving feedback if you want. So I'm going to do, and I'm still like personally, like, because I've been like making feedback for my students for such a long time, I feel like it would probably be faster for me to just do it instead of like doing this. But it was fun to kind of play with it in this way. So I'm telling it what I want it to do. I want it to act as a professor who teaches poetry writing. And then I'm going to give it notes about a poem a student wrote. And I want the AI to make the notes into some kind of coherent end note response, right? So usually, like, as I'm going through, like crafting my responses, I have kind of like scribbles, you know what I mean? And then I take my scribbles and turn them into something like more thoughtful. Yeah. So I give the AI the assignment, which is the same one that we used in the previous example. So I'm going to be responding to poems that are about the breakup, right? And then I told the AI that, here's the end of the assignment. I will send my notes in the next chat. So then it responds and it says like, yes, okay, I understand. Please send me with your notes and we'll work on making them good together. So here are my notes. I made sure to kind of put them in like in sort of like a jarbled, like not complete sentence kind of way. So I said, interesting structure, but inconsistent. Use tercets throughout. And then this was my experimentation. I wanted the AI to say why tercets throughout would be like interesting, right? So in poetry writing, a tercet is a 3-line stanza. So then I said, stop elevating your language. It's okay to say blue instead of cerulean. You should also avoid euphemisms. And then I wanted, again, the AI to like give me a reason as to why, you shouldn't use euphemisms, because I wanted to see what it said. the breakup was described well, but what about how things got started? The turn, which is a word that we use in poetry writing, which describes kind of that moment in a poem where things change, right? Like maybe like the poem was really, really happy and then the turn happens and now we're sad, right? The turn was also well executed. So I wanted to see how well the AI like knew some of these specific phrases and words that are kind of like, that refer to different poetry writing things. So here's what it did. Interesting structural choice of tercets. The consistent structure throughout the poem helps create a sense of unity and coherence. So that's true, right? You know, you can use tercets for several different things, but that consistency does kind of help things feel, you know, kind of like predictable in that way. The feedback on avoiding elevated language and opting for simpler, more accessible vocabulary is valuable. So, and then that other thing is also true, right? Finding a balance between images and clarity to really connect with your audience, to think about who your audience is. Think about avoiding euphemisms. Direct language can convey emotions more effectively. That's also sometimes true. And there's room for further exploration about how things began, which would add depth to the narrative. And then the poem includes a turn, which is a critical element in poetry. That's true. The shift provides a powerful impact on the reader and enhances the overall effectiveness of the poem. So, I mean, some of the things it said were very true, right? And it took my like super messy notes and really cleaned them up and made them like into complete sentences and whatever else. So what I'd like to do is, which one of these do we like best? Which piece of feedback? Because I'm going to ask it to like say more. So let's pick one. Which one do you like, Tamara?
I don't know. Well, I think a couple of them, maybe to say more about the euphemisms.
Okay. Yeah. How about that? Maybe I think you could elaborate what you said. Can you talk about the importance of direct language? Can you give an example of a euphemism to show how it's not as effective? Let's see what it does. Holy cow, it's writing a novel. This is actually kind of well said.
And it's really well connected to the assignment.
Yeah. This is freakishly good. I mean, it's long, you know, but I mean, it definitely did what I asked it to do, right? Which was to say a little bit more about like that one thing. One of the things that like I find myself doing, like when I'm grading papers, especially, is like if something keeps coming up again and again and again, right? Like Mag, like what's something that you find your students are like constantly screwing up when they like write papers?
Diction.
Okay.
Using words that don't make sense, you know, in the way that they think it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a constant one for us.
So like I find that like sometimes when I'm grading, I'm kind of like going back and like copying and pasting something that I said once
Yeah.
again and again and again, right? But I
Mhm.
wonder about like using generative AI to kind of come up with a series of statements about those
Yeah.
constant things that are coming up, right? And then you can refine them and kind of change them to how you want them, but then have those off to the side. And then that way, you know, if you know that it's something that's going to be consistently coming
Yeah.
up again and again, you might be able to kind of have like a, you know, and then
Yeah,
you don't have to
like-
write it out every single time, right? It would be faster to just kind of be able to copy and paste it over for some of those
Yeah.
recurring problems.
Right.
There's a lot of anecdotes that students use when I'm asking them to do research writing. Academic writing, and you know, they're not citing research, they're just talking about like something they, you know, experience. So that's another thing I'm constantly like, no, that's not data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, I think, to kind of come up with, you know, just some general stuff that you would be able to then recycle
Mhm.
again and again as you're giving feedback for some of that stuff, right? Like obviously like there's a lot more like direct feedback that we give that's much more specific, but like I find myself like for me it's like because I have my students write in MLA style and they're, you know, maybe they're screwing up like the in-text citations, right? So I find myself writing again and again, you know, like, no, in the in-text citation, this is how it's structured, right? And something like that would be very easy for me to come up with some boilerplate language, and then I could just copy and paste it into their stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny you were saying that because we use APA in our program, but I have folks who are used to MLA, and so I find similar commonalities across their papers. And you're right, it does get repetitive. So how to communicate that effectively across and consistently?
Yeah,
it's a great tool for that.
Yeah, and I mean it does. I mean anybody who teaches, you know, any class that has writing knows, right, how much
Exactly.
time it can take to do that sort of thing. So I think, you know, obviously like that, you know, not to input their writing, but to input what we think, and then
Correct.
have it kind of like pretty up our thoughts, right? I
Mhm.
think it is an okay way to use this to kind of help us make things a little bit faster sometimes.
Well, and I was just thinking too, with the example that it generated for the euphemism, like sometimes, because I'm thinking about some of the writing assignments that we have, the situations that they're writing about are pretty unique. And for me, sometimes for me as a starting point to generate an example using this to help them further their thinking would be a helpful tool as well.
Definitely. So we're at the end of our hour, but thank you very much for coming. Do you have any questions, or were there any follow-up things that you would like to see from us about this?
Well, I'm not sure right now about follow-up because you've got my wheels turning. So I really appreciate that you put this together and that I had the opportunity to learn from all of you today, and especially your example, Stephanie, because I want to go away and try some of this. And I think after that I might have more questions, but this was a great launching pad for me today. So thank you so much.
And you could generate syllabi, you could generate learning objectives, you could generate whole
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah.
With learning objectives and the mapping across all those. It's quite powerful.
Yeah, I had to kind of pick and choose what to include for today, right? But I mean, I imagine perhaps for like winter breakouts, you know, we can do more and
Right.
have more examples of how faculty can use AI tools.
No, but I think you pick some of the core things that were always, well, at least when I think about myself in terms of framing assignments, the rubric piece for us is huge. And so, and then the feedback piece. So I think your examples are well placed for me anyways today. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, it was so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And
Great to meet you.
hope to
And
see
I
you
wish
again
you all
soon.
a great week.
Yeah, you
You
too.
too.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Okay, so I'm going to stop share.
Yeah,
Stop
and
recording.
Stop recording first.
Stop recording.
Mhm.